because the human strand can run more frequency because it's not distorted and it has 12 codes instead of 11 or 10, eventually through activation and through evolution, through the time cycles, the human strand will progressively have more frequency, so it will overpower the reversal, bringing it back to the right mathematical sequence.
We are following the path of the Dashi, the path of Christ-star return. When I use the word Christ-star, by the way, or any of the words like Kryst or anything like that, we spell it with a K. It's either K-R-I-S-T, sometimes we use shorthand, or K-R-Y-S-T. There's a reason for that. It's not maybe because we're basing everything on the Bible or anything like that, nothing against the Bible, but it's spelled with a K because that's how it originally was, and what it refers to are, it's actually, there's 7 syllables to it. We often will just shorten it to 5. It's the first 7 audible sound tones of creation, and they are ka, ra, ya, sa, ta, ha, la, and we also often just shorten it to ka, ya, ra, sa, ta, Kryst, right? So that's where we use the word Kryst. It has to do with the sound tones, the vibrations, the first audible sound tones when we get into first particle creation. Before all these structures occur in the cosmos, there are certain things that happen on a very, very, very nano-micro level that the first, what would be audible sounds or audible vibrations, and that is why we use that word Kryst. So that's where it's coming from. It's not saying, we're Christian, that's a, which means we're not this and we're not that and we're not the other thing. It's something that belongs to everyone.
Merkaba mechanics are nothing more than vortice mechanics, interdimensional vortice mechanics. Merkaba fields are counter-rotating fields of electromagnetic energy, and we'll look at what a Krystic one is, what one is able to hold the living light form, and what types of Merkaba hold dead light or static light, which ones are finite, which ones are eternal. We'll look at that quickly, but enough where you can understand, begin to understand the difference between the word Krystic and anti-Krystic, where you can get out of the Dark Ages and get your head out of doomsday Bible stuff, where it's like the Antichrist, big thing rising out of the ocean, going to come get you, if you're not good and go to church every day and that kind of thing. The stories of the Kryst and the Antichrist, the Christ and the Antichrist, were all about a knowledge we once had on this planet that was clear, it was technical, it was this knowledge that told you about the physics mechanics of creation and of biology in manifestation. Because at a certain point, everything starts out Krystic. There is nothing that was created as anti-Krystic. And anti-Krystic doesn't mean evil, bad, necessarily. It can act that way sometimes, but what is evil but live or live spelled backwards? All right? Anti-Krystic is the reverse of Krystic. Krystic is a form of light that allows for perpetual motion creation because it can continually re-spark itself. So anything it expends, it can actually replace and replicate. Natural light, Krystic light, breathes. It expands and contracts, which means it needs spirals of energy, one going in, incoming energy toward the center, and the other expanding out toward the outside, not the outside of the sphere of source, let's say, but expanding outward to the inside of the outside parameter, and then back inside to the center. Expanding and contracting, breathing rhythm, right? Merkaba fields and vortices are about breathing rhythm, the breathing rhythm of frequencies up and down the dimensional structures from here in the 15-dimensional system, but also in the systems of what the 15-dimensional system is connected to. So they're all an intrinsic part. It is the circulatory system, the breathing system, by which God's source perpetually, sorry about that, I haven't slept all night, so my words are a little slower than my brain. Anyway, God's source perpetually cycles consciousness into and out of manifestation through the structures of Merkaba fields.
This system we're living in this world right now, is built upon the ideas of lack, of finite existence, of not enoughness of anything, and of a group of people that have to compete with each other in order to have the right and the energy to be on a planet. That is an anti-Christos model for the last 25,000 years, and for a bit of time before that. This planet has been fulfilling an anti-Christos vision that was not the vision
of humankind, and it was not the vision of the founders' races. We're beginning to restore what the real vision was. The Christos realignment mission is about bringing that vision back, and it starts with our energy systems. It starts with each one of us recognizing that we are a blessed manifestation and face of God. Right now, the way things work in our system is when we are in spirit form, before we enter a process called fetal integration, where we as spirit consciousness come into a body vehicle to have an incarnation here, we have a problem with the body pattern here because of template distortions, which means as soon as the consciousness comes into the body and intertwines itself with the DNA template, with the gene code, the DNA template literally shuts off about 90% of the consciousness. The part that's left here grows. This is what becomes the person. You remember you as a baby being. It becomes the person that you grow to be here. But the rest of who you are, who you were when you came in, is who you still are, but you don't remember it because you can't bring the memory of yourself as a spirit directly in, because the body serves as a light switch. It's turning most of the current off, most of the current of your consciousness. Now, the current of your consciousness, if you had it fully embodied as a human being with a human template, you would have a minimum of 12 dimensions of consciousness, not just seeing a three-dimensional reality field, but you would be able to access and move your consciousness and your body through 12 dimensions of matter, which means different matter density levels. We were, once upon a time, a species that was immortal. Our bodies did not die. Death is not a natural condition for the human body form. However, we've been dying for a very long time on this planet. There's a reason why we've been dying on this planet, and that reason is a genetic mutation. It's a genetic mutation that has been rendered on the deepest core template level of the subtle bodies, the Cathara grid. And because of that, literally, the way our chromosome structures evolve, the way our gene code in chemical terms evolves, is not what it was intended to be. It is not functioning on its original divine blueprint. So we find ourselves trapped as consciousness in a mortal body form that has a very, very short lifespan that progressively deteriorates before our eyes. Now, indigo children, which is actually, they're called Orifeme. The indigo children, that buzzword they use this day and age for this new wave of babies that are coming in. It's not just babies. They've been coming in for 100 years, and they've been a grail line here for millions of years. All right, it's called the Iani Grail line. And they are Orifeme, Lyran Syrian Orifeme consciousness, the original founders race consciousness. They were the first forms created before humans were created. They were the founders' races. We call them the founders' races because the human imprint and the 12-strand DNA template came out of their larger DNA templates that had from 24 to 48-strand template capacity. So the indigo children now are actually the ancient ones coming back into form and bringing that potential back. Because if there's enough of the 12-strand, of the higher strand, 24 to 48-strand indigo children on the planet activating during the stellar activation cycle, we will generate so much frequency in the race morphogenetic field, or the race template, the tribal shield, that it will begin to clear and purge all the distortions out of the 12-stranders that most of the human population have the 12 strands. So they came in for a reason. They're on a rescue mission to reset the 12-strand pattern for the 12-strand people, and also to run the frequencies of the higher Hiroshe and Kundalini currents, primal light and sound currents, into the grids. But humans, every human, was originally, if you're a human soul, you were designed on a blueprint that holds 12 dimensions of frequency, 12 dimensions of consciousness, that's avatar consciousness. 4 out of the 5 Huva bodies would be activated in circulating energy and breathing energy through your being. Now, we have a real interesting situation on our planet right now, because everything that's walking around in a human body, or what looks like a human body, isn't necessarily human. That's one of the things when your D4 perception starts to turn on and your 4th strand starts to activate, and you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you're seeing lizard faces flip through people and you're thinking you're losing your mind. Because, did I just see a lizard look at me from that person? No. You can think you're nuts for a while. That's when your 4th strand is kicking in and showing you what the person really looks like, what that soul is.
Right now we have reptilian souls on the planet. We have Anunnaki souls on the planet, which are a whole different breed that are not human either. We have a whole bunch of souls on the planet masquerading as humans. Now, it's kind of funny because the ones that are humans on the planet, and the indigos, who also look like humans, none of us look like humans. What we're looking at, what we see now, the race as it is now, is so mutated, it hardly resembles what it used to look like. Human beings and indigos were beautiful. They were very tall. They were quite lean. They were breatharian, which means they didn't have the internal apparatus that we have right now. They came in various skin colors. All of the skin colors on the planet right now are representative of the primary races. You had, red skin, brown skin, black skin, white skin. They were all equal. It wasn't that whites were supreme and blacks were apes. I mean, some of the New Age stuff actually teaches that the black people came out of apes. It's like, talk about problems with these guys. No. Black people, there is a whole grail line, genetic grail line, of very, very high ascended masters that are in black skin form here. They're the same in red skin form, which would come through like Native American or Native North American type Indians. So there's a diversity that's still in the gene code. There is a whole bunch of coding we're carrying in our DNA, and right now, most of us couldn't figure out if we were a human soul in a semi-human body, or if we were Anunnaki or Draconian or what. Because the people who are lizards in human bodies don't know they're lizards, and the people who are Anunnaki don't know they're Anunnaki. And a lot of the people that are learning this stuff would be afraid to find that out, because, oh no, that means I have more problems, right? Does that mean I'm bad? No, it doesn't. At this point, we're in a situation on the planet where our DNA holds many, many mysteries, and it would be very scary to find out exactly how much we have inside of our DNA. I mean, what would you do if you found out that, after all, yes, you incarnated out of a draconian soul matrix, which means you're reptilian? Does that mean you're a bad person? I mean, that's right. No, that's right. Most of the people on the planet right now that are not human consciousness or indigo consciousness are out of two other groups. One is, and both of them happen to be fallen angelic groups. The people that are in human forms that came out of the fallen angelic groups were parts of those collectives that wanted to get their Christos imprint back, and they were trying to run away from the nasty fallen angelic groups that they had been a part of. So they incarnated out of those groups to get into human form on what's called a bioregenesis program to get their 12-strand imprint back. They're the ones who have been chased by the fallen angelic races because they were like members of their own that they controlled who escaped from the prison camp, and they came over to the other side. So right now, even though we will teach you through the Cathara program, and particularly through the Templar program, we will teach you about this genetic distinction that exists. We might all look like we have human faces on, but the reality of what's going on is we are not all human consciousness, and that's okay. Now, we have to be aware of what the draconian agendas are, and we teach that in the Templar course, what the Anunnaki agendas are, because they're taking agendas that are trying to wipe out the other species, and that's not fair play. And they've been playing this game for a long time. Now, if you happen to be a person who's an Anunnaki soul that's incarnate in a body, that doesn't mean you want to do that. That means you have free will choice now that you have a human body. That you can say, excuse me, I don't like that agenda. You know, I'm part of the Christos agenda. So there's lots of people that are coming from those matrices, but they're the people that are, there's a genetic coding that goes with the fallen angelic matrices that makes people who are Anunnaki souls or draconian souls more susceptible to being harmed by the fallen angelics, more susceptible to having their biofields possessed, more susceptible to getting implanted, and more susceptible to getting body snatched, which is full possession. So these are people that, and if, you know, I mean, you never know if you're one until eventually you start to talk to your Christos self. It will let you know. It will not let you know what matrix you incarnated out of. It's not bad to find out. You're draconian, you know, if you're an indigo, if you're a human, if you're a draconian, if you're an Anunnaki. It doesn't matter what the answer is. It just matters in knowing, and you can find this answer in yourself, and it's worth taking some meditations and asking yourself and being ready for the answer. Don't be scared if it says, well, you happen to be draconian. What it means is, okay, that means there's something in my DNA template that I have to be extra careful to use my Maharic seal more often so the other ones can't get a hold of me. Because draconian races and Anunnaki races started out as blessed races just like any of the other founders' races. They ended up with a condition called code convolution. That's kind of like inbreeding genetically. If you take the same template and you combine it and combine it and combine it with itself over and over and over, at a certain point,
the original integrity of the mathematical template breaks down, and you start to get random probability and variations that weren't quite part of the original plan. That's how fallen angelic matrices came into being in the first place. So when we go into the healing issue within ourselves and within the general populations, we need to be aware that not everybody in a human body is a human. And if we make the mistake of doing that blanket unity, false unity stuff, where, oh, we'll just pretend we're all the same, that means we will never discover what our particular DNA needs. You will not discover if there are draconian codes that need to be flipped back to their Christos pattern so they can be cleared. What's happening in the New Age movement is a false unity movement. They're teaching people to see themselves as all one sea of fellow humanity, so you will totally never, ever find out about the diversification that exists. They're doing this so the ones that they have implanted in human bodies, who are dark oversouls running the other agendas, won't be identified. And they're doing it to take over the race genetic code. Now, unity comes from love of diversity. Unity through blessed diversity is what was the creation imprint for this time matrix. In your healing, you will find draconian people coming to you, and you'll start to know. You'll start to recognize it. Yep, that one's out of the Omicron matrix, or yep, that one's out of Odedicron. Yep, that one's an Anunnaki, the Jehovian Anunnaki matrix. No, that one's a Tothian Anunnaki. You'll start to be able to feel the different families of consciousness just by being near the biofield of someone. If we approach this kind of knowledge with the usual nonsense that we're taught to look at things in the 3D world, we will cause damage to ourselves and to others, because we're taught to discriminate and point fingers and blame. What we need to do is approach them all with love, yet also be aware that if you have somebody coming to you to facilitate their healing, and they happen to have some real field problems because they have a DNA susceptibility, because say they're from a draconian matrix and the fallen angelic matrix wants them and wants their body, you may get yourself compromised as a person trying to heal that person, trying to help heal that person. And there's a lot of games played with this. But if you run your Maharic seal and don't forget to do it, you'll have enough frequency in your own biofield where that can't happen. So you can walk where angels fear to tread. You can go in and touch and heal and be a part of things that would terrify anybody that didn't know how to run their Kryst consciousness and its frequencies. And you can know you can go in there and be safe and protected. So this is part of the reason why in the work that we teach, we will teach you about being able to recognize consciousness, being able to face the fact that just because people here wear human faces, that they are not always human souls, and human souls were created with one purpose, one template, divine blueprint, why they were created. Then there were the other ones from the fallen angelic matrices that were literally, some of them, created to destroy humans. They were created as a counter force. The Anunnaki, for example, were a race that was created by the fallen Anu Elohim, who used to be Elohai, and got code convolution and then tried to take over the time matrix. They created a biological race that was called the Anunnaki that has progressively tracked humans and indigos to destroy them, because they were the guardians of this time matrix that were in the way of the Anu Elohim matrix. There's been a lot of Anunnaki that have evolved, have looked at their creator gods and said, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to do what they're doing. We don't like you. We don't want to be bad anymore. We want to be good. So if we can realize some of the agendas that are going down, I don't usually talk about this in Kathara, because a lot of times people themselves are not ready. They're too immature. They go, oh, she's talking about stuff. What do you mean people are all humans? Of course we're all humans. And they get all scared. You don't need to be scared. You just need to be aware. And we're not teaching you to be able to identify the different matrices and then point fingers and say they're bad or they're good. Now, some of them run Christos agendas and some of them run anti-Christos agendas. If you happen to be a person who incarnated out of a matrix who's running an anti-Christos agenda, you'll be the last to know, because they don't tell their own, they use them as puppets. All right? So if you're coming from a matrix like that, this is your chance for freedom. This is your chance to get your own free will back, because you have a human template. To be this far, you have enough of a human template where you can repair and regenerate the rest. Same with the people who might come to you for healing. You might do meditation for a while and really figure out what matrix you're from. Yeah, oh, you're right, yeah, I'm human. Yeah, it feels like I'm human, okay. I can hear a lot of people go, oh, that's good, because people are afraid to be draconian, or they're afraid to find out that they're, maybe an Anunnaki soul or something else in there. Don't be afraid of that, because you're blessed and beautiful even if you are.
God created you too. You've just had some extra evolutionary lessons along the way. So you will be wonderful teachers when you get back up there. That's how we need to look at it. That's how we can love people that are even holding agendas that are against the Christos mission. If you happen to be a person who incarnated out of a matrix that has a bad agenda, bad in relation to the Christos mission, which is the mission that will allow this time matrix to continue and perpetuate under a freedom rather than a control. This is not meant to be a control matrix. If you happen to be out of a matrix like that, you have a history, a long history, of exploring some very, very hard subject matters involving polarity and densities. So you can be proud of yourself for getting as far as you have. And you can also realize that you have absolute power right now, right here, because you've got this far, to make absolutely Christed choices and to become a Christed being with regardless of what your matrix wants to do. But if you don't know that, if you don't know that you happen to be an Anunnaki or a Drac soul, you're not going to know they're pulling your strings. You're not going to know that when you try to talk to your oversoul or your soul, you're going to get Anunnaki Central broadcasting station. And I could give you a list of names of your local broadcasters, but I won't in this workshop. I won't do that in this workshop. But if yeah, what channel are you going to turn to? Who's your local broadcaster here? You can name 5 of the main cable channel networks coming from what we call Phantom Matrix. Followed Angelic Matrix Central. Anyway. What is freeing to know is whatever matrix you're out of, you have the ability, if you have some problems, that you're a part of a collective, that let's say you really want to do a Christos thing. You're a good person, you know it, and you like being that way, and you're not going to tolerate any anti-Christos agenda messing with you. But then you find out, okay, you have a soul level, you have an oversoul level. What if your soul's a nice person too, but your oversoul level is the one that decided it wanted to stay with the twisted matrix, which would imply it had distortions and strand templates that correspond to the oversoul level, 7, 8, and 9. If you know you have your Christos level, you can go over the head of your oversoul and back to your divine blueprint and say, well, that part of me that's up there doing its thing, that right now is choosing to be in conflict with the Christos mission, I'll respect its free will and let it do what it wants, but I want out of here. I don't want to do this, and I don't have to. You can literally run the D12 current down through you and anchor it here. And what it will do, all the way down, is begin to reset the divine blueprint. So you will help your oversoul to heal. Illuminati race origins, creation of the Leviathan force. Now that we know some of the things these beings have been up to, where the heck did they come from? Yeah, we know, I've mentioned enough times, that they were bioregenesis redemption contracts for fallen angelic races, where they were given the privilege to have their template combined with certain elements of the human template in order that they could begin to evolve something that had 12 subharmonics in each strand, so they could evolve eventually a full 12-strand pattern to get the Christos imprint back. Now, this is where and when and how that happened here. These hybridization programs have been going on since the Lyr and Elohim Wars 250 billion years ago, where anything that was from the Phantom Matrix that fell, that wanted to come back over, that wanted to enter the Emerald Covenant and be peaceful, and you know, go back into the Joy imprint, into the Law of One, they would be assisted in getting their templates fixed, because they couldn't get out of the Phantom Matrix once their templates had full reversals. They had to literally progressively reverse the reversals back to the divine blueprint. So that's what the bioregenesis technologies were doing for them, the template restructuring or reordering, regenerating, new beginning for the template. That's why it's a regenesis. Okay? Now, the Illuminati human races are human hybrids inhabited by fallen angelic identities. Identities whom originally entered the Christos Emerald Covenant on bioregenesis redemption contracts to regain their 12-strand DNA Christos potentials, then defected from the Emerald Covenant in favor of fallen angelic anti-Christic agendas. Some of the Illuminati races are actually ones that didn't personally defect. They were tricked into defection, and then they ended up under possession by the fallen angelic collectives they were trying to escape from. And what's interesting, and what's really sad, it's the Illuminati races that have been doing the dirty work of the fallen angelics on this planet. The fallen angelic collectives, just for those guys to have been in
form, to get in a human form, meant they had to make a stand against their fallen angelic collective and agree to do the Emerald Covenant. That's how they got in these body forms. Because of that, their fallen angelic matrices don't forgive and forget. They have used them and abused them, and eventually, once they're done with them, they don't want them back. They consider them completely expendable. They want to walk them through gates that they're not prepared to walk through, so they literally fragment their templates and go back to space dust. So the Illuminati that think they're serving something higher that's going to give them power or recognition or safety or anything, they are being tricked because they are despised, because once upon a time they made a choice to enter the Emerald Covenant, and that wasn't forgotten by those who stand against the Emerald Covenant. So they're actually more vulnerable than the indigo or the human races, because there's a vendetta against them by their fallen angelic matrices. They'll trick them into anything, but they're going to show them. They're going to show them, you're going to betray me? That's the attitudes most of them have. It shows where these guys come down through Atlantis. We have Atlas kings coming out of Atlantis. We have Atlan kings coming out of Atlantis. And from various different king lines in Atlantis, like Antichristos king lines, that's where we end up with Larsa kings and all sorts of things that came up in through the Sumerian and Egyptian dynasties and Chinese dynasties and all sorts of them, because they invaded all of them. But there's literally a progression all the way through. There's not a break in these history lines. It shows the progression from 250,000 BC, when this mess all started, to where they progressively infiltrated. They digressed into Illuminati when Enoch defected from the Emerald Covenant in 10,500 BC, becoming the Illuminati Sons of Zadok of Nohasa, Atlantis. Anybody that's familiar with any of Enoch's teachings, there's a great heralding of the coming of the Nephites and the Sons of Zadok that is being taught in contemporary times. This is where that fits. So it's that Melchizedek human hybrid races were progressively raided by Draconian, Reptilian, and competing Jehovian, Palladian, and Nibiruan Anunnaki fallen angelic collectives since Lemurian Atlantean times, evolving into numerous competing Illuminati races that progressively infiltrated and forced hybridization with human 12-tribe cultures, culminating in transposition of race identity of literally the whole human 12 tribes, races, transposition of race identity and world cultural dominion. That is how it got from its beginnings to here. It was progressive, stage by stage by stage. And this is why they've gone out, the fallen angelics have gone out of their way to hide the Atlantean records. Because if they were remembered, we'd know. We know the game. We know about the Templar quest. We know about the whole game. We know about the hybrids. Right now we're walking around, there's a bunch of people who think we might have come out of apes, and we're not really sure. We all think we're human. Half of us don't even know if we have a soul. We are very primed to be used and manipulated. They force interbreeding between Nibiruan, Thoth, Enki, Palladian, Nibiruan, Samjazi, Luciferian, Alpha, Omega, Centauri, Marduk, Necromaton, Luciferian, and Melchizedek human lines, and the Magi Grail lines to get the amped up coding of all of those together, and then put that together with the Grail line coding. So again, they went through the rape and pillage thing, where they were creating gene lines, killing the males and using the females as breeders, in order to create, to bring together all of these race lines, because they were creating a super Antichristos Leviathan race that would have as many codes in the DNA as possible that corresponded to the planetary grids, so when the time came, they could run reverse round tables and seal the deal. You know the grid work that's being taught out there in the New Age movement by people who aren't running D12 frequency because they're not activating their Maharic seal? That's the teams. The people are being used as part of those teams to run the reverse matrix codes into the DNA. It's a very painstaking effort to build up through hybridization, through rape and pillage, and creating new gene lines and combining those to get as many codes as you could of the angelic human codes, mixed with as many codes as you could of the fallen angelic Leviathan codes, because you create a super Leviathan that had a chance of accessing the planetary grids more fully, because they could run more of the Stargate codes. They would have some of the security seals. They would have some of the templates. And this is why it took quite a while, too. Good thing they had all that time between the last stellar activation cycle and this one, because you couldn't have done this fast. This was a progressive, systematic, calculated, one step after another procedure. We are supposed to be the stopping point of that procedure. It was an experiment in how to take over a species from the inside out. Now, in the old days, there were some really weird things that happened, where before we lost our sensitivity to being able to feel what kind of energy was coming in, some people would know that there was a bad seed coming. There was such a thing as a bad seed. This is when issues of abortion actually first came up, when there would be certain, a woman would start to feel dark avatars in the field, and they could feel that they were being used as a vessel to birth them. And there were times when they would literally throw themselves off cliffs before they would allow that to come through their bodies. There was a lot of abuse done to the human body, particularly with females, where they were used as breeding vessels here from 25,500 BC and forward. So the issue of abortion really started in Atlantis, when women were faced with the choice of whether they were going to be a part, an unwilling part, of allowing this planet to be invaded by fallen angelics who were going to try to take it over, or whether they were going to stop the process. So originally it wasn't about trying to cause harm to something. It was a decision that was made to try to prevent harm from happening. The only person who gets upset with a woman having the free choice to not be a breeder are fallen angelic races who want to get as many of their little bodies on the planet as they possibly can in order to have an army, a fleet of consciousness here in physical form for when the stargates open. There have been breedings going on for 25,000 years to make sure there was a team, a little army, that would represent the fallen angelic sides here in human form. Each race serves to anchor into Earth's planetary shields via their DNA signet codes, Stargate codes, a specific portion of the fire letter sequences of Earth's D12 Shield of Aramatana, Christos Divine Blueprint. So we are putting the fire letters back into the planetary grids. Just by being here, we're actually doing it. But everything is so twisted here with the grids and our DNA right now, if we don't consciously understand that process, it's actually being used against us. Because the reversals in our DNA that were created through the grids are being used right now to amplify the reversals in the planetary grids to get Earth under complete reversal so it can be drawn into phantom matrix. Because the human strand can run more frequency because it's not distorted and it has 12 codes instead of 11 or 10, eventually, through activation and through evolution, through the time cycles, the human strand will progressively have more frequency, so it will overpower the reversal, bringing it back to the right mathematical sequence. Once you know this truth, there is no turning back. There's no ever again being able to go back to light, love, and clueless.